Most people's idea of meditation is that it's the nature of the mind to be active, which is pretty obvious, and it's therefore the job of meditation to control the mind, to still the mind, to get the benefits of inner silence. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was my teacher, he trained me to teach Transcendental Meditation, and I qualified back in 1990. He said that, yes, it's the nature of the mind to be active, but also the nature of the mind to be still. So rather like a river running to the ocean, you don't have to do anything to make the river move towards the ocean. All you need to do is to allow it to do that. It's its fundamental nature. And the mind, given the opportunity, will just flow like a river to the ocean, innocently and effortlessly. All we have to do is get ourselves out of the way of the process. So if it's then also the nature of the mind to be still, you end up with a very different, fundamentally different approach to meditation from what you would if you're trying to still a purely active mind. And this is the difference between Transcendental Meditation and other forms of meditation. And Deepak Chopra, when he learnt it, he said it was a major breakthrough in meditation, because it really brought the tradition back into focus, essentially. And that is what Transcendental Meditation is. It's a very simple, innocent, effortless process of what Maharishi used to say in the 60s, just to let it be, from which obviously the Beatles got the name of a song. Just allow the mind to do what it naturally wants to do. And if the mind's not found going towards silence naturally, then there's other things involved, namely the body. And this is a thing that's very much left out of most meditation teaching, the role of the body in meditation. So we teach people from those who've never ever heard of meditation before and come along to the most experienced meditators of all sorts of other disciplines. And essentially that's the difference with TM. It's not a discipline, it's an innocent, effortless process of allowing the mind to settle. We use a mantra, a sound, which is taught in a very simple process of instruction, and a course over 4 consecutive sessions over generally 3 or 4 days. In that, people are given a mantra, a sound, a primordial sound, a Sanskrit sound, one of nature's sounds, which is particularly effective in allowing the mind that space to just settle in its most effortless, natural way towards stillness. But that's not the whole story, because the purpose of meditation isn't just to be still. You can do that with lots of techniques, settling the mind down. The most common one, of course, nowadays is mindfulness. And that's been used in the yoga tradition for thousands of years, the yoga tradition of which Transcendental Meditation is a part, by the process of yoga postures, pranayama, breathing, with attention on first the body and then the breath. It's known to allow the mind to bring the attention towards quieter levels. Often people talk about the present moment, which is a very valuable thing, to experience the present moment. But actually that's only halfway along the line, along the road, towards a much bigger goal, and that is transcendence, which is the mind settling deeply into silence beyond the present moment, into an unbounded level of silence, which is not an emptiness, it's a fullness of potentiality. And it's the same as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not an emptiness, it contains all the potentiality of our lives, infinite creativity, infinite energy, as well as silence, and a whole range of benefits and all the beautiful things in life that we ought to be, and we find ourselves struggling to be. In fact, we don't need to struggle, we just need to allow our mind to settle into that silence. And those qualities, and this is the important aspect of it, those qualities of inner silence start to permeate spontaneously, gradually more and more up to the surface, and to be experienced in our daily lives. And that is the purpose of meditation. So in Transcendental Meditation, one of the first things we tell people in their course is not to judge the value of the meditation by what happens in the meditation, but by what they're experiencing out in their activity afterwards. And it can transform our lives, and it very often does, just through this experience, that inner silence of the self. For many thousands of years, philosophers have been saying, know yourself, even those not in the yoga tradition, because they knew that the thing missing in our lives is self-awareness. We're so caught up in activity, activity, of course, is the purpose of life. It's a wonderful thing to be active, but if that's not based in a deep silence, that activity can overshadow the mind and cause us all sorts of problems. And the yoga tradition says that it's that loss of awareness of the self, of the silence within, that is the cause of all our problems in life, that forgetting of who we really are. And we settle into that silence. The first thing people notice is that they start to be more clear in their thinking, more awake, more alert, and more calm and peaceful at the same time. Often people who are very creative, like actors, I often teach for many actors and other creative people. One of the first things they're concerned about is, will I lose that nervous tension? Often they say, I need some stress to make me more creative. What they mean really is they need some stimulation. And they fear the loss of that stress that creates that nervous tension that holds them in a state of being able to act, to perform at their best. And sure enough, when they learn, just what they feared happens. They lose that nervous tension, but what comes in its place is something far more profound. An inner silence that's both silent and infinitely creative and alert, which is far more productive than nervous tension and doesn't lead to more and more stress in our systems over time. So that's the purpose of Transcendental Meditation, to live our lives in energy and creativity and happiness spontaneously. There's infinite bliss within. The yoga teachers of thousands of years have said to us that the nature of the self is Satchitananda, eternal bliss consciousness. As I said, the same as the kingdom of heaven, as Jesus said. These are not religious statements, they're just statements of scientific fact that anybody can prove for themselves just by allowing the mind to settle. And then there's no area of life that isn't affected by this process, because there's no level of our lives or aspect of our lives that isn't affected by the stress in our nervous system. And as that disappears under the influence of that inner silence, then there's no area of our lives that isn't affected by this transformation from within. And life just gets increasingly more and more enjoyable and better in every conceivable way. Our health improves, our creativity improves, our relationships improve. Really, every aspect of life is affected. And the fundamental difference between transcendental meditation and processes like mindfulness is the depth of the rest that we get physiologically. The body, when it's exposed to this settling of the mind, the stress that's in our nervous system that's built up over many years can't stay in the presence of that settled awareness, that silence. And rather like the vampires in those old horror movies, exposed to sunlight, so exposed to light, they just have to vanish. They just can't stay there. And the stress in our nervous system is like this when exposed to silence of the mind. It just cannot stay in that presence, and it has to depart. And that's what happens in transcendence, is that the mind is in such a quiet, deep level of awareness, and the stress can't remain in the nervous system in that situation, and it has to get out of the way. And so we dissolve, this is the difference, we fundamentally dissolve the stress in our physiology, which is causing all our problems in life. Scientists have discovered that over the last few decades, that it's actually, there's a lot of stress in the nervous system that builds up and causes all sorts of problems. And they say more than at least 80% of our illness is caused by stress in the nervous system. It's implicated in every illness, ultimately. There's nothing that isn't affected by the body being stressed. And as that starts to leave, obviously it has the opposite effect. We start to be healthier and happier and all these things. It's the most natural, spontaneous thing for the body to respond. And that is the key to higher states of consciousness, as many people come looking for that, as well as just relaxation, that the mind and the body are spontaneously and fundamentally transformed, purified. It's the opposite of what happens when you take drugs. When you take drugs, this suppresses the body and allows the mind the freedom to have an experience. But of course, in order to function normally, there is the problem of mind and body reintegrating after the experience. With meditation, with transcendental meditation, the opposite is the case. The mind is allowed to experience quieter levels. The body is allowed to deeply rest and get rid of the stress. Mind and body in that process become more integrated. This is part of the process of yoga. It's the opposite of what happens when you take drugs. They become more integrated, and it's on the basis of that greater integration but purity of the body that the changes take place. When our bodies are extremely stressed, the body is desperate to release stress. And if we have no proper outlet for that to get rid of the stress, as we do in Transcendental Meditation, then as soon as a situation arises that is challenging to the nervous system, the mind will react, and the body will react with it and start releasing stress. And that's why we get angry. The experience of anger is not normal. It is an aberration caused by stress in the nervous system. The stress wanting to get out, and it comes out, particularly in certain body types, will react to that, to some challenge, somebody calling us a rude word or something, and we get really angry. This is just the body's desperate need to release stress and tension, and it erupts. And the more we meditate, the more that will tend to settle down and disappear. And so many people have felt that they were caught in a trap of anger, and they were always angry, and they just find that very simply, very quickly, after learning TM, we call it TM for short, it's a bit of a mouthful otherwise, that anger just disappears from the nervous system. These emotional problems are not mental problems. There's no such thing as a mental illness. It's all physical in the body. The mind left to itself only knows bliss, deep contentment and peace and happiness. It's the body's impurities that cause us to have experience anything other than that. You're creative rather than reactive. You come from within. You're not a victim of other people's experiences, so other people's actions. So instead of just responding to somebody else's actions, you're able to be creative from within rather than reactive to whatever they're saying or doing. So you become far more yourself again. You're authentic. You're your real self rather than a product of other people's actions and statements and things. With Transcendental Meditation, it's so very simple and natural to do that we don't have to adopt any posture. The only rule for people when they learn to meditate is to sit comfortably and to think the mantra innocently. And the only rule in the actual practice is don't make an effort. It's quite a revelation for some people because they've been told to try to focus the mind, try to concentrate, try to control the mind. And in fact, in TM, we're just told, don't make an effort. It's the simplest, most natural thing in the world. Another thing people misunderstand is that they think Transcendental Meditation is very expensive. It has been historically. And this was the reason why the Meditation Trust was formed, is a reaction to the expensive nature of the teaching. We were very concerned that it shouldn't be elitist, that everybody should have access to it. And very often it's the people with the least money that are the most fighting against the problems of life the hardest and need the most relief from that. And money shouldn't be a barrier to them. It's very important. So we founded the Trust, the Meditation Trust, in 1990, and we've taught thousands of people since, according to their income. And sometimes next to nothing and sometimes for nothing, if it's really, they're in very desperate straits. It's a very important principle of teaching meditation, that lack of money shouldn't come in the way of somebody who wants to learn. For us, it's wonderful, because it's the most wonderful thing you can give anybody, is the knowledge of themselves, and it's such a revelation for people. I often when I'm talking to people before they learn to meditate, I tell them about self-awareness as the result of meditation, and they're very concerned about that. Oh, don't want to know myself, and then they give me a long list of all their negative traits, all their negative personality traits, and I say, no, that's not you. That's your stress that you're describing there. You are something far different from all the anger and the irritability and the negative things that you experience yourself being and doing. That is not you. That's an acquired aspect of your personality, and that can be just dissolved. The world is as we are. It changes according to the state of our consciousness. Many people, even on the first day of learning, they say, many people have said it's like the world was in black and white and now suddenly it's in colour. There's a purity of perception that comes from meditation, often very quickly. Our thinking gets clearer, our perceptions get clearer. Life seems to change dramatically. What's really changing is what's inside us, and people around us change in response to our own stability and creativity and happiness that we start to experience. And we often say to meditators, when they've learnt, they often say, I want to get all my friends and my relations to learn. How do I do that? And we say, just meditate, because the thing that will inspire them to learn is the change in you. Don't run around trying to get them to meditate. We actually act to convince them, exactly. We say, just be yourself, and that self will gradually become more a true, authentic self, and people will want more of what you've got. It's quite a natural process.